First, why would you even want to attract bats to your yard? Because
Hi, welcome to Lilies and Tomatoes, your go-to place for simple and practical tips and tricks on how to start a garden all the way through how to use what you grow. This is from my live class that I teach on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays on Facebook. If you'd like to attend a live class or ask me a question, check out the link in the description.
Hello. Welcome back to my basement workshop. Today we're going to be talking about attracting bats to your yard. I did a little Google and it turns out it's less complicated than when I was going to tell you about flowers, so I switched them. If we have not met yet, my name is Quincy Adams and I want to help you grow some of your own food in a small space on a budget. Okay, let's get started. This is pretty simple, but I would not recommend doing this if you live in an apartment or a townhouse or just in a house with a small lot, because bats travel far and wide and a lot of people see them as a nuisance. A lot of people think they are scary. They do eat a lot of bugs, but if you've got close neighbors, I would not recommend using this method to get rid of bugs. So first, why would you even want to attract bats to your yard? Because a bat can eat 1,000 mosquitoes in an hour. 1,000 mosquitoes in an hour. One tiny little bat. Crazy. All right, another perk for having bats is their droppings. Guano makes a good fertilizer. But it is not something that you can put directly on your garden. You need to compost it first. So it's more like horse manure or cow manure. You need to compost it first. It's not like a rabbit manure you could put on your garden faster. You need to compost it first. How do you get bats to come to your yard? You need to give them food, shelter, and water. This is I'm amazed at how simple this is. The best time to attract bats to your yard is in the spring. And I say yard because we're normally talking about growing food in a small space. Don't do this in a small space. So bats have a cycle. In the wintertime, they fly away to somewhere warm and they hibernate for the winter. Then they come back in the spring. That's the best time to put up your bat house. So you can provide them shelter if you're going to go the bat house route. So March to June, early spring to early summer. Then in the summertime, they have their babies and they're going to raise their babies through the summer. And then in the fall, they get active again. Their babies are set to go off on their own and then they shack up again. And then in the wintertime, they fly away. So spring and summer is when you want to attract them. So in order to provide them food, water, and shelter, food is insects. So you want to use flowers or plants that are fragrant and night blooming. So here is a list of those types of plants, because those plants will attract nocturnal insects. So you want to plant Dahlia, French Marigold, Nicotiana, evening primrose, Thyme, raspberry, honeysuckle, Datura, Moonflower, 4 o'clock, Yucca, night blooming water lily, night blooming Jessamine, Cleome, and also sweet rocket and soapwort release scent in the air at night. I only know moonflowers. I used to grow moonflowers. They have big white blooms that open at night. They're pretty cool. Pale color blooms also have the best chance of bringing in nocturnal bugs. Also having on lights at night attracts bugs. So if you want to have some kind of light feature in your garden, it doesn't matter what kind of lights. If you want to get real crazy, you can have some black lights and then you can see some funky bugs that you wouldn't normally see, but lights are good. You want to also have water. So if there's no natural water feature within a quarter mile of where you live, then you want to have a pond or bird bath or some kind of water feature, because they need to replace 50% of their water every day. And shelter. So bat houses, they are It's like a foot, 2 feet high and 1 foot wide and like only 3 feet wide. And it's like a narrow place for them to like crawl in and get cozy and be protected. So if you're gonna go, you can either build one and find instructions online, or you can buy one. If you're gonna buy one, then the Bat Conservation Institute recommends that you buy one that is certified by the Bat Bat Conservation Institute. And make sure your house is sealed up tight, because where a bat wants to live more than a bat house is your house. So if you have an old house with a drafty attic, don't go putting up a bat house in your yard and thinking that you're going to be cool with the bats, because they're going to move into your house. There are a bunch of requirements for setting up a bat house. It has to be 15 feet in the air. It should be on some kind of a pole or a building. It can be in a tree, but a tree is not necessarily a great place to put it, even though bats like to roost in trees. If you've got old trees on your property that are not going to fall and hurt somebody or another building, then leave the old dead trees, because they like to roost in dead trees and they like to go back to the same spot over and over and over again. So that is bat shelters. And then a couple other notes about attracting bats to your yard. You don't want to use any chemicals in your garden, because if you use insecticides to kill insects, a couple of poison insects will poison the bats and then they'll die. You cannot kill bats in a lot of places. They are not quite endangered, but there's not enough of them, and there's some kind of like something that attacks them when they're hibernating in the wintertime, and a lot of bats are dying. So bat conservation people are like, we need to help the bats. So don't kill the bats. You can't relocate them in the wintertime without hiring a professional. So don't mess with them if you attract them to your house or your bat house. And if you set up a bat house, it can take 2 years for a bat to move into it, because they are picky. So go figure. So that's basically it in a nutshell. Bats can eat up to 1,000 insects or 1,000 mosquitoes in an hour. Their droppings need to be composted before you use them in your yard, but they're awesome. They need food, shelter, and water. You can provide food by planting night blooming or night scented plants, because those attract nocturnal insects. You want the plants to have pale blooms on them. You want to have a water feature in your yard. If there isn't one, a natural water source within a quarter mile. Bats will drink out of a swimming pool, but that's not a good option, because they can get trapped in the swimming pool. And you want to either buy or build a Bat Conservation International certified bat house and put it on a pole or a building, and make sure that your house is sealed up tight, because a bat's favorite house is your house. Are there any questions about attracting bats to your yard? Let's see. I don't see any questions. I will go over this flower list again real quick. I have not heard of most of these flowers except for the moonflowers. I have grown those in the past. They kind of look like big white petunias, except they open at night. They're pretty cool. So the list of plants again is dahlias, French marigolds, Nicotiana, evening primrose, thyme, raspberry, honeysuckle, Datura, moonflower, 4 o'clock, yucca, night blooming water lily, night blooming jessamine and Cleome, and then also sweet rocket and soapwort release a scent at night. Okay, questions. Bat house. Then it won't choose to be under the roof of my deck. Exactly. When I was younger, there was a house at the end of the street that had bats in it, and then they tore the house down. The bats went to our house, and the first year it was like 1 or 2 bats, and then the next year there was more, and then the next year there was a ton of bats, and then they found their way into the actual house. So they weren't just in the attic anymore, they're in the house. We had egress through the fire escape and had to have professionals come in and catch the bats and release them. It was horrible. But generally, bats will not mess with you if you don't mess with them. Just make sure they don't get into your house. It only takes like an opening the size of a quarter for a bat to get into your house. So if you're going to attract bats, make sure that your house is sealed up tight. Like tight. And honestly, I would only do this if I had like property where I had like some kind of a barn or shed that was away from the house. And then I would set up a bat house on that house or on that building. So it'd be far away from my house. Because once they get in, their population doubles every year because they move in the spring and they have their babies in the summer. And then they go away in the fall and then they come back to the same place that they lived before. So then all the babies come back and then those babies have babies. And like their population will grow quickly if you don't do something about it, and you can't kill them. So just be careful with that. But the upside is 1,000 mosquitoes in an hour, which is kind of cool. So if you had like a big farm and you had a bunch of bat houses, then you could have bats fed and lots of fertilizer and just be cool. Any other questions? All right, if that's all for the questions for tonight, we will pick up on Tuesday talking about choosing flowers and planting them. There's a little bit more to flowers. You can use some flowers for companion planting to act as a natural pest repellent. So the flowers thing is a little bit more complicated than attracting bats because bats only need food, water, and shelter. And it sounds like bats are like a heartbeat away from moving into everybody's house at any moment. So Tuesday, we will talk more about flowers to make sure that you can maximize your vegetable and fruit harvest. And then we will also talk about what you should be planting in August for late summer and getting ready for the fall. I will let you guys go. Have a good night. Bye.